Sometimes the biggest stories of our lives begin in the most ordinary places. For a young man from a small Massachusetts town, that place was a bank inside a Walmart. He was a mix of heritages with the quiet resilience of his Portuguese ancestors and the friendly, talkative nature of his Irish side. He started his career with simple ambitions, working his way up with dedication and a smile for every customer who walked through the automatic doors. Life was a steady rhythm of opening accounts, counting bills, and dreaming of a future that felt just within reach. He learned that value wasn't just in the money he handled, but in the trust people placed in him. It was a good life, a simple one, built on the foundation of hard work and quiet hope. He eventually became the branch manager, a title that felt both important and humbling. It was a testament to his persistence, to showing up every day and doing the job right. Around this time, a new teller joined the team. She was bright and kind, with a laugh that could cut through the monotonous hum of the cash-counting machines. He watched her from his small office, noticing the way she treated elderly customers with patience and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams. He was the manager and she was the teller, but in the small world of that bank, they were just two people finding their way. Their story didn't start with a grand gesture, but with shared glances over computer screens and quiet conversations during lunch breaks. Their connection grew naturally, like a vine finding its way toward the sun. It was built on the small, everyday things. They talked about their families, their hometowns, and the futures they hoped to build. He learned about her aspirations, and she learned about his deep-seated loyalty and his gentle heart. The bank, once just a place of employment, became the backdrop to their unfolding love story. It was where they discovered a shared sense of humor and a mutual respect for each other's work ethic. Their colleagues saw it before they even admitted it to themselves, the subtle chemistry that sparked between them in the quiet moments of the day. It was a love born not of drama, but of simple, honest friendship. In the landscape of their lives, this beginning was everything. It wasn't a whirlwind romance from a movie screen, it was real. It was two people from modest backgrounds finding solace and excitement in one another. He, the steady manager with a heart full of unspoken hopes, and she, the bright teller with a future full of possibilities. Their story was a quiet promise whispered in the aisles of a Walmart, a testament to the idea that love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it begins with a simple shared good morning and grows from there, nurtured by the steady beat of an ordinary life, which was in its own way quite extraordinary. Their dates were simple. Walks in the park, cozy nights out at local restaurants, watching TV together, enjoying live music, and taking weekend trips to the beach. These moments, though ordinary, became the foundation of their love story. Just as the world was about to change in ways no one could have predicted, their own world expanded with the greatest joy imaginable. Their daughter was born, a tiny, perfect miracle who arrived just before the whispers of a pandemic turned into a global shout. Holding her for the first time, the man felt a love so profound it reshaped his entire being. He saw the future in her eyes, a future he and his wife would build for her, brick by brick. They brought her home from the hospital to a world that was on the brink of shutting down, unaware of the immense challenges that lay just ahead. Those first few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights, joyful cuddles, and the overwhelming feeling of new parenthood. Then COVID-19 arrived and the world locked its doors. The normal support systems for new parents vanished overnight. There were no visits from grandparents, no friends dropping by with a hot meal, no mommy and me classes to attend. They were isolated, just the three of them and their dog, in a house that suddenly felt both like a sanctuary and a prison. The joy of having a new baby was now intertwined with a constant, low-grade anxiety about the state of the world. Every cough from a stranger on their rare trips for essentials felt like a threat. The simple act of going to the grocery store became a mission, fraught with peril. The pressures of this new reality began to mount. As essential workers at the bank, they had to navigate the risks of public-facing jobs while trying to keep their newborn daughter safe. The stress was immense. The man tried to be the rock, the steady presence his family needed, but inside he was just as scared as everyone else. The days bled into one another, a monotonous cycle of work, childcare, and sanitizing everything that came into the house. The shared adventures and spontaneous dates that had once defined their relationship were replaced by the relentless demands of a newborn and the suffocating weight of a global crisis. The four walls of their home started to feel smaller and smaller. They did their best to create a bubble of normalcy for their daughter. They celebrated her monthly milestones with homemade cakes and took hundreds of photos to send to family they couldn't see. But the strain was undeniable. The lack of sleep, the absence of a support network, and the constant fear created invisible cracks in the foundation of their marriage. The easy laughter that once filled their home became quieter, more infrequent. They were two people trying to navigate an unprecedented storm while also learning how to be parents. And the sheer exhaustion of it all began to take its toll in ways they didn't yet understand. The world had changed, and slowly, so were they. As the pandemic wore on, a subtle but persistent distance began to grow between them. It wasn't something that happened overnight, but a slow, creeping chill that settled into the spaces once filled with warmth and easy affection. The man noticed it first in the small things. The conversations became more transactional, focused on logistics: who would watch the baby, what was for dinner, who would walk the dog. The shared jokes and knowing glances that had been their private language seemed to fade. He would reach for her hand in the evening and she wouldn't pull away, but he could feel a hesitation, a lack of the familiar, comforting response. He tried to bridge the gap. He suggested date nights at home after the baby was asleep, attempting to recreate the connection they once had. But it felt forced, like they were actors playing the parts of their former selves. She seemed distant, her mind elsewhere. He would ask her what was wrong, and she would often reply with a simple, "I'm just tired," a response that was both true and, he suspected, incomplete. The exhaustion of the pandemic and new motherhood was a valid reason, and he tried to be understanding, taking on more of the household duties and childcare to lighten her load. Yet the emotional chasm only seemed to widen. The physical separation began to mirror the emotional one. She started spending more time on her phone, lost in a digital world he wasn't a part of. She made new friends online, people he had never met, and their conversations would often last late into the night. He felt a growing sense of exclusion, of being on the outside of a life she was building without him. The intimacy they had shared, once the cornerstone of their marriage, became a rarity. The loneliness he felt was profound, a strange and painful ache to feel so alone while lying next to the person he had promised to spend his life with. He watched as she slowly began to pull away, not just from him, but from the life they had built together. She started going out more on her own, reconnecting with old friends or meeting new ones. At first he encouraged it, thinking she needed a break, some time for herself, but her absences became more frequent, her explanations more vague. The woman he had married, the one who shared every dream and every secret with him, was becoming a stranger. He was standing on one side of a growing canyon, watching her on the other, with no idea how to build a bridge back to her. The silence in their home was becoming louder than any argument ever could be. The conversation that ended their marriage was not a shouting match. It was quiet, devastatingly calm. She sat him down one evening after their daughter was asleep, and, with a voice devoid of the emotion he expected, she told him she was no longer in love with him. She said she wanted a divorce. The words hung in the air, sharp and unbelievable, shattering the fragile peace of their home. For him, it was a blindside hit, a sudden and brutal collision he never saw coming. He stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the girl he had met at the bank, the wife he had traveled the world with. Shock was the first wave to crash over him. He couldn't process it. He asked why, searching for a reason, a tangible mistake he could fix. Her answers were vague, speaking of unhappiness, of feeling lost, of needing to find herself. There was no single event, no great betrayal she pointed to, just a slow erosion of feeling he had somehow missed. He felt a profound sense of failure. How could he, the man who was supposed to be her partner, her protector, have been so oblivious to her pain? The life he had cherished, the future he had so carefully planned, was dissolving before his very eyes, and he felt utterly powerless to stop it. Then came the anger, hot and sharp, followed by a betrayal that cut deeper than any anger could. This was the person he had trusted completely, the one he had shared his most vulnerable self with. The promises they had made in that small church felt like a cruel joke. He replayed the last few months in his mind, the distance, the late-night phone calls, the new friends. It all clicked into place with a sickening thud. The separation hadn't been gradual for her, it had been a calculated withdrawal. He felt foolish, naive, and heartbroken all at once. The pain was a physical thing, a weight in his chest that made it hard to breathe. In the days that followed, he moved through life in a fog. He went to work, managed his team, smiled at customers, and came home to a house that felt hollow and cold. He would look at his daughter, so innocent and unaware of the fracture in her world, and the grief would hit him anew. He had to pack up his wife's belongings, each item a painful reminder of a shared memory, a life that was now over. The world he had known had fallen apart, and he was left standing in the rubble with a broken heart, a beautiful little girl to care for, and no map for how to move forward. In the immediate aftermath of the separation, the man's world shrank to two essential responsibilities, his daughter and his dog. There was just no time to crumble, no space to fully succumb to the overwhelming grief. His little girl needed her father. She needed breakfast in the morning, clean clothes to wear, and bedtime stories at night. She needed a sense of normalcy in a world that had been turned upside down. So, he put on a brave face for her. He learned to braid her hair. Though his fingers were clumsy at first, he perfected the art of making pancakes shaped like cartoon characters. He became both mother and father, a dual role he never anticipated but embraced with every ounce of strength he had. His days became a masterclass in multitasking and sheer endurance. He would wake up before the sun, get his daughter ready, and drop her off at daycare. Then he would head to the bank, where he had to be the calm, competent manager, solving problems and leading his team, all while his own life was in turmoil. After work, he would rush back to pick up his daughter, his heart lifting at the sight of her smile. Their evenings were filled with playtime, dinner, baths, and books. He and their loyal dog would sit by her bed until she fell asleep, the three of them a small, resilient pack. He was exhausted, but his daughter's happiness was his fuel. He focused on creating new, positive memories for her. They had daddy-daughter adventure days on the weekends, exploring local parks, visiting petting zoos, and having picnics by the lake. He wanted her childhood to be filled with joy, not shadowed by the sadness of her parents' divorce. He taught her how to throw a ball for the dog and how to plant flowers in their small garden. He was determined to build a happy, stable home for her, even if it was different from the one he had originally envisioned. His love for her was a powerful anchor, keeping him grounded amidst the turbulent waves of his own emotions. Of course, it was not easy. There were moments when the mask would slip. Late at night, after his daughter was asleep and the house was quiet, the loneliness would creep in. He would sit in the silence, the weight of his reality pressing down on him, but then he would look at a photo of his daughter's smiling face or hear the soft breathing of the dog at his feet, and he would find the resolve to keep going. He was picking up the pieces, not just for himself, but for her. He was building a new life from the wreckage of the old one, and his daughter was the reason for every brick he laid. In the quiet hours when his daughter was asleep, the man would often find himself staring at his reflection, asking the hard questions. It would have been easy to cast himself solely as the victim, the blameless husband who was wronged, but he knew life and love were more complicated than that. He had to look at his own role in the breakdown of his marriage. Had he become complacent? Had he taken her for granted, assuming their love was a fortress that could withstand any storm without reinforcement? He thought back to the endless days of the pandemic, the shared stress, the exhaustion. Perhaps he had been so focused on being the provider that he had forgotten how to be a partner. He acknowledged his mistakes, not as an excuse for his wife's actions, but as a necessary step toward understanding and eventually healing. He remembered the times he was too tired to talk, the evenings he retreated into the silence of his own worries instead of asking about hers. He had seen the warning signs, the distance, the quiet unhappiness, but he had dismissed them as temporary side effects of their stressful circumstances. He had believed that if they just pushed through, everything would go back to normal. He hadn't realized that for her, normal was no longer enough, or perhaps it was no longer what she wanted. This self-reflection was a painful but crucial part of his journey. It's a difficult thing to hold two conflicting truths at once, the feeling of being deeply betrayed and the acknowledgement of one's own shortcomings. He wasn't excusing the way his marriage ended. The dishonesty and the secrecy had inflicted a wound that would take a long time to heal. But he understood that a relationship is a living thing, nurtured by two people. When one or both stop tending to it, it begins to wither. He had to accept his part in that neglect, however unintentional it may have been. It was a humbling and heartbreaking realization. By confronting his own flaws, he wasn't trying to win her back or rewrite the past. He was trying to learn from it. He wanted to be a better man, a better father. He knew that blaming her entirely would only lead to bitterness, a poison that would eventually seep into the new life he was trying to build for his daughter. Taking responsibility, even for the small things, was an act of reclaiming his own agency. It was a way of saying, "This happened, and I played a part in it, and now I will learn from it." It was a quiet, solitary step toward a future where he could perhaps forgive both her and himself. Even with the new routines and the focus on his daughter, the shadows of his heartbreak lingered. Healing, he was learning, is not a straight line. Some days were good. He would feel a sense of hope, a glimpse of a future where he could be whole again. He would laugh with his daughter, enjoy a walk with his dog, and feel a quiet contentment. On these days, he felt strong, resilient. He believed he could handle anything that came his way. He was a survivor, a father doing his best, and that was enough. The sun felt warmer, the world seemed brighter, and the pain was just a distant echo. But then there were the nights. Sleep became an elusive prize, his mind a relentless replay of memories and what-ifs. He would lie awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, the silence of the house amplifying his loneliness. The space next to him in the bed felt like a vast, empty chasm. He wrestled with the loss of trust, not just in others, but in his own judgment. How could he have been so wrong about the person he thought he knew best? This erosion of trust was one of the deepest wounds, making the idea of a future relationship feel both impossible and terrifying. The loneliness was a constant companion, a ghost that sat with him in the quiet moments. Sadness would ambush him at unexpected times. A song on the radio that they once loved, a place they used to visit, or even the smell of a certain perfume could send him spiraling back into grief. He would be in the middle of a mundane task, like grocery shopping, and suddenly feel a wave of sorrow so intense it would take his breath away. He learned to function with this undercurrent of sadness, to push it down when he needed to be strong for his daughter. But it was always there, just beneath the surface. It was the price of a love that had once been so real and a loss that felt just as profound. He tried to find healthy ways to cope. He focused on his work, finding a sense of purpose and stability there. He spent as much time as possible outdoors with his daughter and their dog, letting the fresh air clear his head. He knew he was still in the thick of it, that the journey through this pain was far from over. The shadows were long, and the nights were often difficult. But with each sunrise, he made a conscious choice to get up, to be a father, and to face the day. He held on to the small moments of joy, the glimmers of hope, as a lifeline in the dark water. This story is not yet over. It is a story in progress, one that is being lived out day by day. The man from Massachusetts, the one with the Portuguese resilience and the Irish heart, is still on his journey. He is a father, a dog owner, a bank manager, and a man trying to heal a broken heart. He gets up every morning and does his best for his daughter and for himself. He carries his sadness, but he does not let it define him. He is learning that strength isn't about not falling. It's about getting back up, time and time again, even when your legs are shaking and your spirit is weary. He has shared his story not for pity, but for connection. In the depths of his loneliness, he has come to understand that so many others walk a similar path. Heartbreak is a universal language, a sorrow that touches lives in every corner of the world. He knows he is not the first man to have his world turned upside down, nor will he be the last. There is a quiet solidarity in that knowledge, a sense that we are all part of a larger human story of love, loss, and the incredible capacity of the human spirit to endure. His tale is a single chapter in that vast book, and so we come to you. Life teaches us lessons, often through pain. For those who have navigated these treacherous waters, what wisdom have you gained? What advice would you offer a man who is trying his best, but still struggles with the sleepless nights and the lingering sadness? What words of encouragement would you share with a father who is pouring all of his love into his daughter while trying to piece his own heart back together? How does one learn to trust again, to open oneself up to the possibility of love after such a profound betrayal? Your kindness can be a light in his darkness. This is an invitation, a call for the quiet wisdom that comes from lived experience. Share your thoughts, your stories of healing, your gentle advice. Let this be a space where compassion triumphs over judgment. Let us offer a hand to a fellow traveler in the dark to remind him that he is not alone. Because sometimes the most powerful thing in the world is a kind word from a stranger, a simple reminder that storms do pass, and that even after the most brutal winter, the sun will eventually shine again. What would you say to him?